Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I think we're in for some interesting information, and I'm excited to dive into things. Yeah, this is gonna be great. For sure. I'll try to sum this up quickly for everybody here. I grew up in a really small town in rural Canada. So my life was a lot of it when I was younger was in a very small community. Me, my reputation had to be held really close to me. Everybody knew everybody. And that was a really big thing that I've carried through with me into everything else that I do in life. I grew up in a family run whitewater rafting company. So outdoor adventure, spent a lot of time in my younger years in the wilderness, outside, taking people into interesting places and exploring things with them. I then branched away from that after about 10 or 12 years in that field into the tech industry, where I explored being an entrepreneur myself for a few years, which then led me into kind of where I am now as a lifestyle coach for stress management and positive living. So that's the quick recap of Freeman's life. This is a great question, and something I've given a lot of thought to as well is what has, I guess, really what has made me the positive individual that I am, what has continued to allow me to operate very functionally in very high stress environments. So, working obviously as a whitewater rafting guide in the outdoor industry, very high stress, dealing with a lot of moving parts, whether it be actually on the river itself or as an operations manager, and dealing with all of that and dealing with these high stress environments, but also still having to maintain a level of positivity and excitement. Obviously, you're dealing with your guests and you can't let them know that things are maybe going awry in the background. So that's where a lot of it really started to form, I think. And it came to me that there's this thing that my brain does. There's a structure that I sort of walk through to make my way through things. And I'll go back a slightly bit here into a bit more of a couple stories throughout my life and some challenges that I have overcome, so to speak. So, in the realm of physical challenge, I suppose I've definitely been in many situations, uh, being a whitewater rafting guide, that were quite drastic, very intense. Certainly times where I would, you know, even say certainly life threatening. There's been a few times where things have been close. But the way that my brain is trained and structured has allowed me to work through those and enables me to see kind of where I am now. And the same thing with career progression and stuff like that. Those are big challenges, stepping away from something that you've been doing for 10 years and you're an expert at to completely pivot into a different field. A lot of these things kind of take a level of introspection and looking at what you're doing. And the biggest thing that I'll boil them down to is the ability to create a structure in your brain that you can follow that helps you walk through whether it be a negative experience or a stressful situation or a problem that you've come off. But if you have a mental framework that you will automatically go back to every single time and walk through that framework, that is a huge step in being able to make those right decisions and coming through challenges. So that would, yeah, that would be the biggest thing that I've learned. Yeah, hmm, I certainly hope so. Yeah. Yeah, of course. This is really what I believe. I don't know if saying I believe what I'm here to do is, but certainly one of the callings that I feel for myself is this ability to help people not only work through this themselves, but also just give them the tools to enable them to do it. My goal would be to not have to work necessarily with me, but as you said, I am a stress management coach, really helping people generate kind of that positive living in life. The main way that I kind of help people do this, and it's interesting that we've already been chatting about sort of challenges and why it's the difference between challenge and problem. And a lot of this comes down to a lot of what I do is understanding the mindset sort of around stress and this bit of a confusing way that we have of talking about stress. So we kind of deem stress as like a negative thing in our lives. And while there are certainly negative stressors that can happen in our life, and certainly chronic stress and long-term stress can have very negative consequences, we generally generalize stress as in this massive thing, and it's everything from traumatic experiences to being stuck in daily traffic. We call all of that stress. The thing is, though, that although traumatic things are very bad and we need to do our best to avoid that level of stress, small daily stress can actually be beneficial to our bodies. And this jumps back to the whole challenge thing that we were just chatting about. If you view stress or a stressful situation as a challenge versus a threat, your body actually reacts differently. And it actually changes biologically what happens inside of you. So making that mindset shift to understand, okay, the stress that are in my life are a challenge. They're there because I'm passionate and I care about something is a much stronger way to look at the stressors and challenges in your life. So a lot of what I do is to help people embody that mindset. And the same thing goes along with being happier and being more positive. I help them embody that mindset. Now, a lot of times you hear people just saying things like, we got to change our mindset on this, we have to change our mindset on stress, and we have to be happier. And saying those things doesn't help. Just trying to act that way doesn't do any good. What makes the difference is actually taking action and building your habits. Because what happens is if certain habits that you have, your habits become your behavior, your behavior become your thoughts. And that's really what starts to shape your personality. So if you're like, I want to be a happier person or I want to be less affected by stress, well, then you have to start with smaller pockets of habits and create these habits in your life that become daily things that you do that lead you to being a more positive person, that lead you to being a person that isn't as affected by levels of stress. And that's really what I help people do through my coaching is to set those habits up to build structure in their lives so that they can become a more positive or a person who's less affected by stress, not just feel that way, but actually become that type of person. And that's ultimately what I do. And I do it through my social media that I give out. So if people are looking to follow me, they can find me on LinkedIn at Freeman Beals and same on Instagram. And my website is also Freeman Beals. So everything is just Freeman Beals. It's really easy to find me online. If you want, you can simply follow me on socials. I put out daily stuff around this topic. But if you are looking for more, then I do one-on-one coaching as well, and you can access me through that. Hmm. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, this is an interesting question, and I'm glad you brought it up. And I think that a lot of people don't spend enough time thinking about this question for themselves. Personally, I think that you need to understand there's a incredibly powerful book called Start with Why by Simon Sinek. And I think a lot of people need to really start asking themselves why they want to do certain things, why they do certain things. And a lot of this has been a driving factor of my life before I read the book as well, is that curiosity of why. And I continue to do that as I move forward in life and with what I'm doing. So it's why do I want to be a coach? Why do I want to help people live a more positive life? Why do I want to help people deal with, manage their stress better and stuff like that? And interestingly, as I've turned these thoughts over in my brain, one big thing kind of stood out to me. And then it's the fact that what I do, in my opinion, anyways, isn't groundbreaking. It's not hard. It's not, some new science, some fandangled technology. It's quite basic. but the impacts of it are drastic. Like you briefly mentioned there, if we're surrounded by negative stress and dealing with negative stress, whether that be our perception of it or surely the actual stressor itself, um, it does have these negative health consequences. And it is one of the stress is one of the biggest leading causes of so many issues. Part of that is our perception of stress, part of that is the amount of stress in our life. It doesn't really matter. The fact is that stress itself has become an issue. And when I realized that the solution to sort of moving around this stress and managing it better and living with more positivity isn't that complicated, I realized that I hopefully, anyways, can impact millions of people to live longer lives and for people to not have to lose loved ones and people that they care about and see these stats on how bad stress is because if we build the right habits and things in our lives we can start to counteract this, and the more that we do that the more other people start to see it, and it creates this rippling effect that happens in the world. So ultimately my goal is to just do my part to create the ripples that will create a happier world, a more positive world, and a world that really understands stress in a much more healthy way. So that's my ultimate goal, is to have that ripple effect, have that impact, and really start to see it change, not just my life and the people I work with, but the people that they interact with as well, and really cause that profound rippling effect, which will, hopefully encourage other people to do the same thing as well. I think we can all share more positive, we can all share more healthy things. Like you said, a lot of it out there is is negative news headlines. It's what we're drawn to as human beings, unfortunately. So I think it's up to us to make sure that we are doing what we can to counteract that, and my goal is to have that impact on people's lives. Thank you so much. Of course. There's something that I always like to leave people with. And if those listening right now or to the recording of this, if you take anything away, this is the one thing I want everybody to start doing, because in my brain, it's as far as we can have a silver bullet that solves these problems, this is that silver bullet. It's that if you can do just this tonight, when you sit down before you go to sleep, I want you to get a pen and paper, or it could be a notebook on your app, or however you need to, but just write down three things that went well. And that's all it takes. What this will begin to do is actually train your brain to look more for more positive things in your life, because you're saying to your brain, hey, I want to remember the good stuff that's happened today. So your brain throughout the day will start to look for those more positive things. And this begins to rewire the neurons in your brain. And we can get into neuroplasticity, but that's a much longer conversation. But the idea is that you're training your brain to look for positive things in your life. And it literally takes a minute, 2 minutes at the end of your day to write down those three positive things. Don't make it hard, don't make it challenging. Just do that. And I think if everybody starts to do that, that'll have a massive impact on you, on the people around you, and create, again, drive into that ripple effect that we're hoping for. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Recording stopped.